Welcome to Between the Covers Summer Series. We are putting the spotlight on South Florida authors. Joining me with his first novel is Len Getz. Len was a career IRS agent, and the book is a crime story, and the main character is none other than an IRS agent. The title is Innocent Spouse. Welcome. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
I want to start with the title because I learned something. Innocent Spouse isn't just the title. It is an actual kind of financial relief. And if you would explain that from put on your IRS hat for a moment.
Oh my God, I haven't done that in a long time.
Okay.
So, yes, Innocent Spouse is something that any spouse can make. If you did not know or have no reason to know about your spouse's unreported income or inflated deductions, then you can be relieved of the tax consequences of that part of the tax.
As long as you weren't aware of it.
As long as that's right. As long as you weren't aware of it. That's right. That's right. So if there is a code in the IRS that says innocent spouse.
Innocent spouse. And these are the cases that your protagonist, Ivan Samuels, is dealing with in the book.
Correct.
So who is Ivan? Give us the snapshot.
Well, Ivan is an IRS agent. He's been there for many, many years. He's not me, but you're right about what you know. So I know about him, and he's the agent who's been, his whole career he's done lots of different cases, lots of high-level cases, high-profile cases, large cases. And he's been doing that most of his career. But lately, he's kind of like, he was also a manager. And he decided he's had enough of being a manager. After his wife passed away, he just wanted to make life easy for himself. So he decided he was just going to do innocent spouse cases, and that was going to be it until and hopefully coast the rest of his career doing that.
Well, that's what he thought.
That's what he thought.
Did you ever think, because you already said you are not Ivan, Ivan is not you. Did you ever think when you're at the IRS, you're doing audits, did something go, wow, this has the makings of a crime novel?
Well, I've always wanted to be a novelist, and one of my favorite authors is an attorney who lives in Philadelphia. He writes about his protagonist is an attorney who fights crime. So I'm thinking, if I'm going to write a novel, which I've always wanted to do in my whole life, and I wanted to be something that people will read, exciting, a crime mystery. So if a lawyer can fight crime, can fight mysteries doing his work, why can't an IRS agent? Well, is it possible? So I really thought really hard about how that could be done, and I came up with a lot of different scenarios. And I came up with one, and then I tossed it, and then I came up with one that I thought would work, where he'd be tapped to do an audit of the biggest newspaper in Philadelphia. And in the course of doing that, he would discover clues to the murder of its investigative journalist. And there were some things in my life that I used to kind of like embolden and spice up the novel.
Ivan is a single dad. He has a college-age daughter. He also has this young, vivacious assistant, Kesha. I want to know, was it a challenge or was it just a ton of fun to develop two young female characters?
It was actually fun. And again, for some reason, IRS people have a bad rep. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
Again, I get it. But so in order to make him likable, to make him personable, I thought, making him a single dad would make him more likable and bring people in, engage more people. So a single dad. And then I thought of a daughter. I thought maybe would have more interest. And she's a perky college student who's also, trying to find her way in life. She's affected by her mother's death. So Ivan has to play mom and dad. And turned out she's a journalist too.
And there's a connection to the dead.
That's right. She actually is she's going to journalism school at Temple University in Philadelphia, and her adjunct professor, instructor, happens to be Sandra Wolf, who is the journalist for the Philadelphia Times, who was murdered. And of course, that affects her too, because she lost her mother, and now she loses her best friend.
I found Kesha especially fascinating. Now, Ivan and Kesha both are multi-layered, they are complex. But give me a little more about Kesha. She's an interesting woman.
So Kesha is his assistant at the IRS. She was actually in his training program. She was a trainee. And at the time, she was just a young black woman who was very vivacious and had lots of questions. But then, over the course of time, she becomes a Muslim. And but she's very perky. And I'm thinking, we have to give some more interest in this. Have her a character that to add something to the novel, because there's lots of issues out there with regard to Islam and the Muslim community, lots of things that are misunderstood. So I thought I'd bring in another facet in there to counteract some of the Islamic fundamentalism that you hear that's so prevalent in the news.
I thought that was a very well way to craft her story. Are there challenges in, let's say, fictionalizing the same IRS agency that you know so well? And I'm curious, at the same time, are there considerations that you had to make to navigate the IRS to make it entertaining, to make it a fun book to read?
So obviously doing a tax order is kind of tedious, right? So nobody wants to read about somebody who's just going through large ledgers and books. So I came up with something more interesting. So for example, unreported income. That's something that has to be discovered. It's not there in the book. It's not there in the tax return. It's out there somewhere. So I came up with this idea, and I guess we'll read it, and something a little off the beaten track. Like, for example, at some point he tells Kesha to get a copy of last year's Times from Thanksgiving and this year's Times from Thanksgiving. Let's compare them, and let's see if they're the same. And they said, well, no, they're not the same. This year's is a lot smaller, but yet they're making a lot more money this year. How can that be? So that's another interesting way of delving into a tax issue and to develop a tax issue, but it's not but it's also a little bit off outside the box,
and to make it entertaining. What is it that you hope that readers are going to take away from this book?
A good story. That there's problems out there in the world, that need to be addressed. You see this Islamic fundamentalism is a problem. It's here in this country, and you need to be aware of it. But at the same time, that's a minority. Although it's a very verbal and active and vocal minority, but it has to be addressed, and it could be anywhere. And so people should be more aware of it. And and also we talk about newspapers, and right now there's lots of foreign monies into universities. There's possible foreign monies into newspapers that it's going to affect the way things are written. Are they going to have an impact on how the story is being spun? So people need to be aware of these things, in the world.
Well, speaking of stories, I do hope that we get to see these characters in a future story. The title of this book is Innocent Spouse. Len Getz, it has been a pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure's all mine. Well, thank you very much.
I'm Ann Bocock. Please join me on the next Between the Covers.